you haven't signed anything and he hasn't signed anything yet?
No.
Is that because are you guys still trying to work it out, or does it just make more sense for you guys to just be separated right now?
Well, the thing is, we've sat and had a conversation about trying to maybe not do it through attorneys and see if we can come to some type of agreement, you know, that way. And at the same time, I also feel like, and it's not even the point of just trying to work it out, but I'm also like, I'm at a place where I'm like, okay, you know, I pretty much kind of got the information, and am I ready to serve him with these papers? You know, this is the first time something like this has happened in our marriage, and I'm feeling like, okay, you know, is the answer immediately, although it's all this crazy stuff that's happened, is the answer immediately divorce, you know, step into this place, or is it let's try to figure out if we're going to just separate and try to work out percentages, things like to that nature. So that's kind of where it is right now, just maybe considering not having to do an actual divorce, but just at this moment, but just figuring out what we want to do and see if we want to go ahead and take it to the divorce line later, or you know, that may not be the case. As of right now, who's to say? My main concern ain't even just the fact of filing the divorce. It's just about trying to, you know, stay focused, not overstress myself, and get ready for this baby, whether he's a part of the situation or not.
The moment Rasheeda Frost entered the room, her hand delicately resting on her growing belly, everything seemed to stop. It wasn't just the quiet that filled the space. It was a palpable shift in energy. Her eyes sparkled with a story of joy, hope, and resilience. A story that hadn't been easy to tell, but one she had fought for with unwavering determination. As she stood there, facing the crowd, there was no mistaking the excitement in her voice as she shared the news with the world. Rasheeda was pregnant again with Kirk Frost's child, but this announcement was far more than a simple statement. It was a powerful declaration of victory. It symbolized her strength, her belief in love, and the deep, unbreakable bond she had with Kirk. Despite the rocky road they'd traveled, their journey together had been anything but smooth. Betrayals, misunderstandings, and the weight of their complicated history had often threatened to pull them apart. But through it all, something had remained steady. Their shared commitment to one another, the quiet understanding that despite everything, they were stronger together. Now, after the storms they'd weathered, it was clear they were ready to build something beautiful once again. I'm happy to say that Kirk and I are expecting again, Rasheeda smiled, her eyes brimming with emotion as she spoke to the cameras. The flashing lights surrounded her, but in that moment, it was as if everything else faded away, and the future they'd dreamed of was finally within reach. It's been a long, tough journey, but we're finally moving forward. Our love is stronger than ever, and this baby is nothing short of a blessing. As Rasheeda spoke those words, Kirk stood proudly beside her, matching her smile, his eyes filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. For all the mistakes he had made in the past, mistakes that had pushed Rasheeda to her breaking point, this was the moment that made it all feel worthwhile. This was redemption. This child wasn't just another baby on the way. It was a symbol of new beginnings, a fresh start. It was hope, wrapped in tiny fingers and toes, signaling that despite their complicated history, they were finding their way back to each other. The weight of the challenges they had faced together was still there, but now it felt lighter. This child represented everything they had fought for, a love that had been tested but was now more solid than ever, a bond that had weathered every storm. As news of their pregnancy spread, social media exploded with reactions. Fans cheered them on, applauding their resilience, while critics questioned the timing and the state of their relationship. The buzz was undeniable. But Rasheeda and Kirk didn't pay much attention to the noise. They had faced down the harshest of criticisms before, and nothing would tear them down now. They had weathered the worst of the storms, and their focus was now firmly set on the future, the family they were rebuilding, and the love they were strengthening day by day. Jasmine had always been a complex figure in their lives, an unpredictable storm of emotions and conflict. She'd entered the picture years ago, stirring up a whirlwind of drama and leaving behind a trail of hurt. The paternity of her child had been a source of endless tension between Kirk and Rasheeda. And though the couple had fought through it, patched up their wounds and rebuilt their trust, the scars of the past had never fully healed. For a long time, Jasmine had convinced herself that Kirk would choose her. She believed in the bond they shared, thinking it was more than just a fleeting affair. But as time passed, that dream slowly shattered. What she had hoped would be a fairy tale had never been anything close to it. The reality of her relationship with Kirk had been far from the happily ever after she had imagined, and the news of Rasheeda's pregnancy was the final blow to the fantasy she had held onto for so long. The pain Jasmine felt was deeper than anything she had ever imagined. Seeing Rasheeda's announcement unfold felt like a punch to the gut, one that brought everything to the surface. The betrayal, the dashed hopes, the feeling of being invisible, in a relationship that had once seemed so full of possibility. In that moment, it all came crashing down, overwhelming her with a tidal wave of emotions she had worked so hard to bury. As the reality of the situation set in, Jasmine found herself spiraling, trapped in the weight of a truth she couldn't escape. Rasheeda and Kirk were stronger than ever, celebrating a new life together, while she was left picking up the shattered pieces of her own dreams. The very family she had once envisioned with Kirk was now growing in someone else's arms, and the raw pain of that truth was unbearable. Alone in her apartment, the walls closing in around her, Jasmine broke down. Away from the prying eyes of the public and the cameras, she allowed herself to feel everything she had kept hidden. How could she not? She had poured so much of herself into Kirk, believed in their love, convinced herself that their connection was real. But in the end, it hadn't been enough. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, but none of the messages brought her comfort. There were the sympathetic texts from friends, the ones who meant well but didn't truly understand the depth of the hurt. And then there were those who only knew bits and pieces of the story and felt the need to choose sides. None of it mattered. The one thing that remained was undeniable. Kirk had moved on, and worse yet, Rasheeda was the one who had claimed the victory. Jasmine's mind replayed the promises Kirk had made to her, the moments when he had looked into her eyes and made her believe that they could build something beautiful together. But now, all of those memories felt like echoes of a distant dream, a fantasy that had long since faded into the past. Rasheeda had won. Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as the weight of it all crushed her. She had tried to be strong, tried to move forward. But the pain was too much. It felt as though every step of healing she had taken over the years had been wiped away in an instant. She hadn't imagined it would end like this. But now, there was nothing. Nothing but the jagged remnants of what could have been, and the agonizing reality that everything had slipped through her fingers. The weight in Jasmine's chest was almost unbearable, an ache she could feel all the way to her bones. The bitter sting of rejection had never been more real. For years, she had been caught in the whirlwind of Kirk's attention as it swung endlessly from one woman to the next, leaving her stranded in the middle of it all. Now she finally saw the truth, clear and undeniable. She had always been the afterthought, the mistake, the one who never got the happy ending. And yet, even as the tears fell, the sobs racking her body, there was a small, flickering light of clarity in her heart. Deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of her story, just another painful chapter, in a book that had yet to be finished. How long it would take for the wound to heal, she couldn't say. But one thing was certain: the love she had for Kirk, no matter how deep, how sincere, had never been enough to make him choose her. And that, more than anything, was the hardest truth to accept. Meanwhile, Kirk and Rasheeda were moving forward, their hearts intertwined with a renewed sense of purpose. They had weathered unimaginable storms, surviving betrayals and misunderstandings that had once torn them apart. But now, they were doing what they had always believed was possible, building something beautiful, a family, a future. The cracks in their relationship had been mended, and with the joyful news of their baby on the way, they felt like they had everything they needed to make their family whole once more. Their bond, once tested and torn, now felt unbreakable. The contrast between the two women, Rasheeda, at peace with the life she had fought for, and Jasmine, torn apart by the fragments of her shattered dreams, was as stark as it was painful. For Rasheeda, it was a time of celebration, a moment to bask in the joy of new beginnings. For Jasmine, it was a harsh reminder of everything she had lost, everything that had slipped through her fingers. But time, as it always does, has a way of healing even the deepest wounds, those that seem impossible to mend. Rasheeda and Kirk's journey was just beginning, while Jasmine, left to face the wreckage of her past, would have to find her own path forward. It would be a journey of self-discovery, a process of learning to live with the lessons of the past, and, one day, of letting go of the hurt that had so long defined her life.